Abu Lahab himself took the initiative in the new series of persecutions and started instigating countless incidents of harmful acts and other manifestations of hatred and nastiness against Muhammad, peace be upon him. He stopped at nothing from throwing stones at him, forcing his two sons to divorce their wives, Ruqayyah and Kulsum, the Prophet's daughters, showing delight at the death of his second son and calling him the man cut off from offspring, and then shadowing his steps during the pilgrimage seasons and in open forums, as we mentioned earlier, to belie him and persuade the Bedouins against him and his call. Tariq bin Abdullah al-Muharabi narrated that he would not stop at merely rebuking the Prophet, peace be upon him. Rather, he would throw stones at him until his ankles bled. His wife, Jamil bint Hab, the sister of Abu Sufyan, also had her share in this merciless campaign. She proved that she was not less than her husband in the enmity and hatred she had for the Prophet, peace be upon him. In order to cause him bodily injury, she used to tie bundles of thorns with ropes of twisted palm leaf fiber and scatter them in the paths which the Prophet, peace be upon him. She was an ill-mannered and bad-tempered woman who used abusive language and was highly skilled in the art of hatching intrigues and enkindling the fire of enmity and hatred. She was deservedly labeled as the carrier of firewood in the noble Quran. On receiving this news, she directly proceeded to the Kaaba with a handful of pebbles to throw at the Prophet, peace be upon him. However, Allah the Almighty took away her sight, and she saw only Abu Bakr, who was sitting next to the Prophet, peace be upon him. She then addressed Abu Bakr in the most insolent manner, threatening to break his companion's mouth with her handful of pebbles, and recited a line of verse having words full of disrespect, disobedience. We have disobeyed the dispraised one, rejected his call, and alienated ourselves from his religion. When she left Abu Bakr and turned to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and inquired about the matter, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "She did not see me. Allah prevented her from being able to see me." Abu Bakr al-Bazzar also recorded this story, but in his version, when she stopped at Abu Bakr, she said, "O Abu Bakr, we ridicule your companion." Abu Bakr replied, "No, by the Lord of this structure, Kaaba, he has not articulated nor uttered poetry." She replied, "You have said the truth." Abu Lahab and his household used to inflict shameful forms of torture and harassment in spite of the blood relation that tied them, for he was the Prophet's uncle and lived next door to him. Similarly, other neighbors of the Prophet would cause harm to him in his own house as well. Ibn Ishaq said, "The group of those who used to harm Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, in his house included Abu Lahab, Al-Hakam bin Abul Az bin Umayyah, Uqba bin Abi Mu'ayt, Adi bin Hamra al-Thaqafi, and Ibn al-Azda al-Hudali. These were his neighbors, and he was not safe from any of them except for Al-Hakam bin Abul Az. One of them would throw the womb of a sheep on him while he was praying, another would throw it in his prepared pot of food. Then Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, would use a rock to screen himself from them when he prayed. When they would throw these harmful things on him, he would remove them with a piece of wood and put it by the door, then say, "O Bani Abd Manaf, what kind of neighborly treatment is this?" Then he would throw it in the street. Al-Bukhari, on the authority of Ibn Masud, narrated, once the Prophet, peace be upon him, was offering prayers near the Kaaba. Abu Jahl was sitting with some of his companions. Some of them said to the others, "Who among you will bring the guts of a camel of Bani so-and-so and put it on the back of Muhammad, peace be upon him, when he prostrates?" The most wretched of them, Uqba bin Abi Mu'ayt, got up and brought it. He waited until the Prophet, peace be upon him, prostrated, and then placed it on his back between his shoulders. I was watching but could not do anything. I wished I had some people with me to hold out against them. They started laughing and falling upon one another in their mirth. Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, was in prostration, and he did not lift his head up until Fatima, the Prophet's daughter, came and removed it from his back. He raised his head and said thrice, "O Allah, destroy the infidels of Quraysh." It was hard for Abu Jahl and his companions when the Prophet, peace be upon him, invoked Allah against them, as they had a belief that prayers and invocations were accepted in this city, Makkah. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "O Allah, destroy Abu Jahl, Utbah bin Rabi'ah, Shaybah bin Rabi'ah, Al-Walid bin Utbah, Umayyah bin Khalaf, and Uqba bin Abi Mu'ayt. And he mentioned the seventh, whose name I cannot recall. By Allah in whose hand my life is, I saw the dead bodies of those persons who were counted by Allah's Messenger in the Kalib, one of the wells of Badr. The seventh person was Umrah bin al-Walid. Umayyah bin Khalaf would slander and talk badly about Allah's Messenger whenever he saw him. It was about him that Allah revealed, "Woe to every slanderer and backbiter." Ibn Hisham said, Al-Humaza is the one who publicly mocks a person, and Al-Humaza is the one who secretly declares the defects of people and defames them. Uqba bin Abi Mu'ayt, Umayyah's brother, once attended an audience of the Prophet peace be upon him and listened to him preaching Islam. A close friend of his, Ubay bin Khalaf, heard of this. He could not bear this, so he strongly condemned Uqba and ordered him to spit in the face of Allah's Messenger peace be upon him, and he shamelessly did it. Ubay did not spare any conceivable means to harm the Prophet peace be upon him. He even ground old decomposed bones and blew the powder on him. Al-Akhnas bin Shuraik at-Thaqafi used to slander the character of the Prophet saint and vilify him at every opportunity. The noble Quran, in direct reference to this man's shameful deeds, attached to him 9 repulsive characteristics: and obey not everyone who swears much, and is considered worthless, a slanderer, going about with calumnies, hinderer of the good, transgressor, sinful, cruel, after all that base born of illegitimate birth. Sometimes Abu Jahl would come to listen to Allah's Messenger recite the Quran, then he would leave without believing in it, nor taking heed to its warnings. He would harm Allah's Messenger in speech, he would take every opportunity to obstruct the message of Allah, and then he would go around arrogantly boasting about what he did. Allah revealed about him. So he, the disbeliever, neither believed in this Quran and the message of Muhammad, nor prayed. He, moreover, wanted to debar the Prophet M from praying in the noble sanctuary. It happened once that the Prophet was praying within the area of the sacred house, when Abu Jahl proceeded toward him threateningly and uttering abusive language. The Prophet peace be upon him admonished him severely, to which Abu Jahl answered back rudely, claiming that he was the mightiest in Makkah. Allah then revealed, "Then let him call upon his council of helpers. We will call out the guards of hell to deal with him." In another version of the same incident, the Prophet peace be upon him took Abu Jahl by his neck, moved him back and forth severely, saying, "Woe to you, O man," and then again, "Woe to you." Again, "Woe to you, O man," and then again, "Woe to you." Notwithstanding this reproach, Abu Jahl never woke up to his mistakes, nor did he realize the harm of his foolish actions. On the contrary, he was determined to go to extremes, and swore he would throw dust in the messenger's face and step on his neck. No sooner had he proceeded to fulfill his wicked intention than he was seen turning back, shielding himself with his hands, as if something horrible was in his pursuit. His companions asked him what was the matter. He said, "I perceived a ditch of burning fire and some wings flying." Later on, the messenger peace be upon him commented, saying, "If he had proceeded further, the angels would have plucked off his limbs one after another." Such was the disgraceful treatment meted out to the Prophet peace be upon him and the Muslims at the hands of the evil pagans who claimed that they were Allah's people living in his sanctuary. In the light of this inhuman harassment, the Prophet peace be upon him deemed it wise to advise his followers to conceal their conversion in both word and deed. He took the decision to meet them secretly, lest the Quraysh should get to know of his designs and plot to foil his goals. He also wanted to avoid open confrontation with the polytheists, because at that early stage such action would not be in the interest of the fledgling call to Islam that was still fragile and weak. Once, in the 4th year of prophethood, the Muslims were on their way to the hillocks of Makkah to hold a secret meeting with the Prophet peace be upon him, when a group of polytheists observed their suspicious movement and began to abuse and fight them. Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas beat a polytheist and shed his blood, and thus recorded the first instance of bloodshed in the history of Islam. On the other hand, the Prophet peace be upon him proclaimed the Islamic faith and preached it openly with deep devotion and steadfast pursuit. However, for the general welfare of the new converts and in consideration of the strategic interests of Islam, he took Dar al-Arqam, the estate of Al-Arqam bin Abul Arqam al-Makhzumi on As-Safa, as a temporary center to meet his followers secretly and instruct them in the Quran and in Islamic wisdom. The series of persecutions started late in the fourth year of prophethood, slowly at first, but steadily accelerated and worsened day by day and month by month. By the middle of the fifth year, the situation got so grave and intolerable that the Muslims began to think of feasible ways to avert the painful torture meted out to them. It was in this depressing and desperate period that Allah informed them that His earth was not restricted for them, alluding to migration. He revealed Surat Az-Zumar, chapter 39, the groups, saying in it, "Good is for those who do good in this world, and Allah's earth is spacious. Only those who are patient shall receive their rewards in full without reckoning." The Prophet, peace be upon him, knew that Ashima, who held the title of Negus, king of Abyssinia, Ethiopia, was a just ruler who would not wrong any of his subjects, so he permitted some of his followers to seek asylum in Abyssinia, Ethiopia. In Rajab of the fifth year of prophethood, a group of 12 men and 4 women left for Abyssinia, Ethiopia. Among the emigrants were Usman bin Affan and his wife Ruqayya, the daughter of the Prophet, peace be upon him. With respect to these 2 emigrants, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "They are the first people to migrate in the cause of Allah after Ibrahim and Lot. They slipped out of Makkah under the heavy curtain of a dark night and headed for the sea, where 2 boats happened to be sailing for Abyssinia, Ethiopia, which was their destination. News of their intended departure reached the ears of the Quraysh, so some men were sent after them, but the believers had already left the port of Shu'aibah towards their place of protection, where they were received warmly and accorded due hospitality. In Ramadan of the same year, the Prophet, peace be upon him, went into the holy sanctuary, where there was a large host of Quraysh polytheists, including some notables and elders. Suddenly, he began reciting Surat-Un-Najm, chapter 41, the street hour. The awe-inspiring words of Allah descended unexpectedly upon them, and they were stunned by them. It was the first time they were astounded by the truthful revelation. Formerly, it had been the favorite trick of the people who wished to dishonor revelation to avoid listening to it by talking loudly and rudely when it was being read, so that even the other listeners would not be able to hear. They used to think that they were drowning out Allah's speech. They would say, "Listen not to this Quran, and make noise in the midst of its recitation that you may overcome." When the unspeakably fascinating words of Allah came into direct contact with their hearts, they were spellbound and lost consciousness of the material world around them, and were caught in a state of complete attentiveness to the divine words, to such an extent that when the Prophet, peace be upon him, reached the stormy ending, "So fall you down in prostration to Allah and worship Him alone," the idolaters, unconsciously and with full compliance, prostrated themselves in a truly helpless state. It was in fact a wonderful moment when the truth cleaved through the shameless souls of the arrogant ones and the attitude of the scoffers. They street oohed stunned when they perceived that Allah's words had conquered their hearts, and they had done the very act that they had been trying hard to eradicate and exterminate. The other polytheists, who had not been present on the scene, accused and blamed them severely. Consequently, they began to fabricate lies and began blaming the Prophet, peace be upon him, alleging that he had attached to their idols great respect and ascribed to them the power of desirable intercession. This was merely a desperate attempt to establish a justification for prostrating themselves with the Prophet, peace be upon him, on that day. Of course, this foolish and wicked slanderous behavior was in line with their already common practice of telling lies and hatching plots. News of this incident was reported to the Muslim emigrants in Abyssinia, Ethiopia. They were informed that the entire Quraysh had embraced Islam, so they made their way back home. They arrived in Makkah in Shawwal of the same year. When they were only at an hour's distance from Makkah, they discovered the reality of the situation. Some of them returned to Abyssinia, Ethiopia. Others entered secretly into the city or went in publicly but under the protection of a local notable person.